myself and go around the room for people to introduce themselves for the, for us and for the cable TV. Good evening, my name's Tom Riome. I'm chairman of the Public Works Committee. We are meeting at 5 p.m. on, it's a little after now, 5:15 p.m. on Monday, May 14th in the first floor conference room at City Hall. We have a couple items only tonight to do, and item number 1 is to discuss and take action on sewer and water utilities on 14th Street North between Norton Street and the North Dead End. This we had this a couple weeks ago, or whatever the date was, 24th or something, I think, and we're back to go over it.
So I guess just to recap a bit on kind of where we left it, the item was tabled at the last meeting. Provided some additional information for the committee to take a look at for consideration. It's basically summarized into 3 options, and those are included in the packet. The first option would be to install sewer and water services directly to 1331 14th Street North. Under that option, the service lines would go directly from the intersection at Norton Street and 14th Street directly to the property. So it'd be a bit abnormal for service lines, but they're just longer service lines. So that'd be something that the city could install, property owner could install, just depending. It's 100% cost to the property owner. No action would be needed from the committee for that option. Another option would be, rather than installing services all the way down, that 200 feet down that dead end street, would be to install sewer and water main. So we'd have mainline sewer and water, which would be a city-owned asset down to the dead end, and then split off with services. Under option 2, by ordinance and city policy, that option kind of lays out that service lines would be installed to both lots, 1330 and 1331. That would be assessed 100% cost to the for the mainline sewer and the sewer services to the adjacent property owners. And then the third option would be again installing sanitary sewer main and water main. Be installing services to both properties again, and under let's see here, it'd just be installing services to 1330 14th Street North, and then we'd also install services to 1330 14th Street North, but it'd be a deferred assessment. So at such time that the property owner would develop that lot, that would be assessed at that time. The city would hold it on its books, I guess, until that time. Or another sub option under option 3 would be not to install services to 1330, and that at some point in the future, if they were wanted or needed, they could be installed at that time. So that's kind of a basic summary of the options that are kind of before the committee today. The cost to install the services direct to the let's see, where did that go? It's at the bottom of the first page. To install 1-inch copper water service and 2-inch low pressure sewer line directly to service 1331 14th Street North is estimated to cost between $12,100 and $15,600. This would again be a direct cost, 100% cost to the property owner. So it kind of comes down to if the city is interested in pursuing that route or installing a mainline system down the dead end and then servicing the lots off of that.
Mr. Chairperson.
Yes, sir.
I guess I'll start by saying that I was the one that made the motion to postpone this to a later date. Reason being is because I was unsure, as well as everybody else in the room, of is this exactly what Pete's Meat Market wanted, or what the desired outcome was to be. did not vote to deny it. I voted to postpone it until I got more information. Interestingly enough, I did get more information. I talked with the COO of Pizza Meat Market, and I do feel confident that they know or understand where they're at with purchasing that property, as well as installing water and sewer. What I was against at the time is options B and C that is presented in front of having water and sewer extended to the property 1330 14th Street across the street. And the reason why I was is because the individuals that showed up and I guess representative of that property indicated that they didn't want water and sewer, and you guys are here again, and if I can ask that question, is it your interest to want to have that water and sewer brought to the property?
We have no interest.
You have no interest. So as far as I'm concerned, if this is a case where I'm reading it here, which I was unaware we could have done or what could have done last meeting, it says property owner agrees to pay 100% option A, or option scenario A, option 1. No action is needed by the committee for this item if it's just specifically for 1331 14th Street North.
Excuse me if I may. That was always the option I was talking. I'm Rod, I'm the COO of Pizza Meat Service. And that was always the option I was talking with Joe Eichstedt about, was us paying for incomplete entirety of the sewer and water.
Correct.
12,000 to 15,600.
Thank you for coming to the meeting. I really appreciate that, and I wish that, you know, a representative would have came to the meeting prior so that we could have cleared any of this up. What wasn't clear to me last meeting was that no action would be necessary by the committee for this. So technically, even with myself postponing this, you guys could have actually done it if I'm reading this correctly.
That's not what Joe told me. He actually called me and said that he said that we could have done it on our own after you guys postpone it, but we really want the city to, you know, because we want whoever the city uses as a contractor to do it, to make sure that all the permits are pulled right, because I don't know anything about that. I know about the meat business. I don't know anything about pulling permits for sewer and water and all that kind of stuff. So, and this is the owner, Tim, right here, of Pizza Meat Service. So yeah, we just wanted the city to go ahead and basically do the whole thing, because you guys know the contractors and all that, and, you know, we're willing to foot the bill on it.
I agree, but what I'm suggesting is that during the meeting where we were to vote on, it was not suggested that this doesn't need council or committee action on it. So that's, like I said, if it would have been suggested at the time that we could have agreed with the property owners across the street and they didn't want it, we would have said, we don't need action, let now the new owners of Pizza Meat Market at 1331 do what they need to do, right? I mean, that's what I'm suggesting, is that no one told me at the last committee meeting that no action was an option for what we needed to do moving forward.
Yeah, in order for the city to do the installation, we should have a recommendation out of this committee and council. No action that the owner could install it, but, you know, the owner wants the city to be involved in the installation, and, you know, if it's not a water main and sanitary sewer project, it doesn't need to be enumerated. It's a service, which isn't accessible, it's just billed for. But in order for the city to do that, we'd like to have something come out of the committee to get referred to council, a motion to you know, allow the city to perform the installation on behalf of Pete's Meats for their service. Without that, they could still do the work. Just not sure that it'd be appropriate for the city to do the work on their behalf.
This is where I'm having a problem, because it seems like we're getting this information every single time. What is the current policy? Can someone just dig up the street and hook up water and sewer? That's almost what I'm hearing right now, is that Pete's Meat Market could dig up the road.
It's gonna be
themselves.
bored. There's no digging.
Regardless, it doesn't matter, okay? What is the policy? Because if we need committee referral or committee recommendation, or it says literally right here, no action is needed by the committee for this item. What is different? Mr. Chairperson, you have been on this council for a lot longer than I have, am I,
You're reading here, you're seeing what's written there.
I'm seeing what's written, and I don't get it.
And I understand what Joel said, the committee, he'd rather have a recommendation, but that isn't what Abe says.
Right, no action's needed for Pete's Meat Market to install a sanitary service. They just need to get a permit, they can install it. They would prefer to have the city do the installation on their behalf.
That's not what this says. If it suggested, the recommendation is to have the city be the contractor, or the city be the construction management service, that's fine. I don't want to prohibit Pete's Meat Market from doing this, but I can't vote on something when I'm not presented the proper information. I don't.
So option one doesn't say anything about the city performing the services. And that's, you know, that was our question last month. And that's why I think when it appeared that it's a yes or no vote, but they can still do the work under option A if they choose to do it themselves. Right? They would like the city to do that. We have the staff and the capability to do it. The city has a desire to do its own work in its own right of way to ensure quality and, you know.
So I think the confusion is that under the option one, it says no action is needed by the committee. Option two would be to install it for both services, to pay both.
That'd be a
families.
sanitary main, not just a service.
Okay.
And option three is also a main. What's unique about this situation is generally when there's a request for service, the main gets extended, the main is assessed, it's, you know, in this case there'd be a deferred assessment, and the services are attached. That's normally what happens. In that case too, the project gets enumerated, developer wants to do something, we'd have a budget amendment hearing for that type of activity, right? This is different. This is a bit unique. It is not normal that a service would be run several hundred feet down the street from the nearest sanitary sewer main. So it's unique in that aspect. There would be no action though if they submitted their permits to do that. I'm uncomfortable without action though for the city to do that work on their behalf without approval from the committee and the council. So if there was confusion there, I apologize.
Which option would that be?
So it would be option one with the city performing the work.
It doesn't say that. Option one is no action is needed by the committee for this item.
As it's written, you're right. For Pete's Meats to install their own sanitary service lateral, no action is required.
I mean, going back to the previous meeting, it was stressed to me that I didn't even have the legal authority as a committee member to even make a postponement of that particular item that we took up. And then after that, the discussion that I had via telephone call with the COO of Pete's Market, he even emphasized that after he talked with the mayor, correct? That I didn't legally have that responsibility. I don't remember the mayor being at that meeting. I remember Joe Terry being at that meeting stressing to me that I didn't have the right to make that vote. So if I didn't have the right to make the vote to postpone, then do I even have the right to approve an action item? I don't get
So
it.
the issue about postponement last time had nothing to do with the installation of the services. It had to do with, you specifically asked for information on how the property was going to be used. That was my concern, is that the use of property has nothing to do with public works. It has really nothing to do with anything city related. If it's a zoning issue in the future, that's a zoning thing, but the question at hand was just the installation of the service, and that's where I was hoping we could maintain our focus. And if there's if there's confusion in this, again, I apologize. We tried to rewrite this to make it a little clearer so that there's an understanding that the property owners can proceed without the city getting involved. The property owners would like the city to be involved, right? So that's their preference. I think we could quickly move forward if there were a motion to essentially accept option one with the city performing the work on behalf of Pete's Meats. I think we can just move the thing right forward if you're comfortable with that.
Well, I think we can move it, and I don't wanna use the word quick, I think we can move it forward tonight. I don't have a problem with Pete's Meat Market hooking up to our sewer and water. Now, what I do wanna do is look into the future and eliminate any possibility from any property owner hooking up to our service, whether it's water, sewer, or any other utilities, by themselves. And having any utility hookup be construction management or managed by the city itself. Does that make sense? Why is it that someone can hook up to the sewer and then actually have no action is needed by the committee? That's ridiculous.
Well, any plumber that's doing work can get their permits, and because it's private from the house to the mainline sewer. And so if a property owner has a service lateral that needs to be replaced, they could hire a plumber and pull their permits and do that work. And it would, the city's made aware of it, permits are issued. But a plumber can do that work. There are situations where the city and staff would like to be involved. In a lot of cases, the plumbers don't like to work out in the street. It's not, generally within their wheelhouse as far as curb replacement, those types of compaction activities, things like that. So there are times where it's beneficial both to the property owner and the city to have the city perform those types of activities. And when the city does, we currently don't have something specific in the ordinance. So when the city's gonna do those types of activities, we'd like to run it past the committee and council, make sure that, it's okay with the council to perform that work.
But really what you're asking to do is run the sewer main instead of a lateral all the way to hook up. That's
Okay.
basically what you're looking to do.
The policy question is, the property owners would prefer not to have the main run. Okay, so that's a bit unusual, but that's their wish. The property owners would like, so it's just a service, and the property owners would like to have the city perform or manage the construction of that service, so that they don't have to worry about it. They get a bill from the city and they can go to work. They don't have to worry about, the administrative tasks, so on and so forth. So that's their ask. That ask is a little bit different. And so, that's why we're bringing it before the committee for consideration, is if the committee and council's okay with doing that, then we'll proceed and get that work done.
Mayor?
I just wanted to offer some clarification. When I spoke with the folks from Pete's Meats, the question was, how is the use of the I understood that at the meeting prior, the night prior, that there was a conversation about the use of that property. And frankly, I shared a similar concern about use and zoning, and that's my initial reaction was, well, where is this and why? So I'll admit that I had a similar reaction, I think, that you had, Alderperson Kubaschak, but my conversation was that if any of those questions outside of the question before the committee, that considering those other items was inappropriate, from the standpoint that if we're concerned about what the other use for that property is going to be outside of the question, which the question, as I understood before the committee, is how do we want to hook up water and sewer services to this property? That's the question. There is no consideration about what they're going to do with that water and sewer, what activities are going to be going on there, particularly because there had already been exploration by the property owner with the zoning administrator. So my comments were specific to, it's not appropriate for the Public Works Committee to determine any other use issues outside of water and sewer services. So I'm not sure what was relayed, and I apologize if you interpreted, or if there was a message interpreted that you were not performing, whatever your statement was. I just wanted to make sure that we were all clear and understood what my issues were on this. And that's simply, how do you run water and sewer to the property? And then the second question is, I think big picture and long term, if you've got undeveloped property that isn't going to be serviced with water and sewer, what good is that? Not necessarily your ownership, but ownership down the line. So in terms of city's planning, I just wonder if, based on the recommendation, I think that the staff is asking for was simply to run the right services to service the property, so at some point in the future they're available. And I believe that's the right decision. Now, how you fund that and how the other dynamics, I'm not on the committee to figure that out, but I just want to offer that clarification and just some insight on how I feel the council should consider that item.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor, for making that clarification, but I want to also emphasize that it wasn't necessarily zoning usage or usage. I had a concern about the cost, because if there was a case where there was some unknown misunderstanding and no one was here to be able to explain that misunderstanding or potential misunderstanding, and this is one thing that I talked with you on the phone, is that I referenced Schneider v. Waukesha, which is a landmark state Supreme Court case, and I actually think I aired in when I was talking with you about the car wash case, but it's similar in terms of, regardless if it's Adam Tagan's office that gives you permission to do it, if somehow he was wrong in issuing certain permits, Schneider v. Waukesha suggests the main verbiage in there that the court has came down with is government cannot create a estoppel against itself, which means that it can't suggest that just because a zoning coordinator gave you permission, that it allows you to do it indefinitely. And what had happened was someone built an addition to the house, a neighbor filed suit, a circuit judge reviewed it and suggested that the local government could not issue that, and the guy had to tear 2/3 of his porch down, or his addition. And that was my concern, looking at the broad picture. And on top of it, this is one thing that I really didn't discuss, but I had wore a zoning administrator hat in the past, and there was a particular case where a person came to town, bought 4 parcels together, and wanted to build a house there. The 4 parcels were located adjacent to a right-of-way, a village right-of-way that was 260 feet long, but it was kind of a dead end, or it actually wasn't even built. It was an actual right-of-way, a road right-of-way, but it was grass. Because there wasn't anything developed there, and if I do recall correctly, the individual who bought that property said, "Can I have access? Can I have a driveway? Can I have access to that property because I want to build my house there?" And I said, "It's a right of way. You know, you have absolute access to that." Well, 6 months went by, 9 months went by. Now they decided that they wanted to start looking at building and looking at potential water and sewer extensions, kind of almost on a similar thing like this, but it was a case where they were waiting for the village to build a road. And I said, "We're not building a road." Well, they misunderstood me, or somehow the situation was is that the village would actually build an actual road with road base and asphalt and everything else, curb and gutter, to their adjacent property to be able to get there. And it turned into not a fun deal, and that's why I postponed it, and that's what my concern was in terms of this, because in government, and I know that we talked about this on the phone, I did not want to postpone it to hinder your guys' profits and not go to another month and whatever, but I have experience in the past where if I don't have 100% clarification on that, I'm reluctant to vote for something moving forward just in case, until I know completely on it. And after talking with you on the phone, I feel confident. You know, so again, that's the clarification why I had the postponement, and it wasn't because I thought that I had the legal authority to do it, or not having the legal authority about it. I just was afraid that somehow something might have potentially, out of the 99% chance that it wasn't going to be that 1%, now someone's holding the bag at $12,000 to $15,000 for water and sewer laterals that maybe you're down the road, the property isn't being utilized. So that's my clarification for postponing it. So I believe that I was well within my legal authority to postpone it.
Well, as a point of order, I think again, we're talking about use of property. It's not the city's job to try to protect the property owner. The property owner wants water and sewer. Our committee's request is strictly water and sewer. I think we need to get back on topic.
Okay, and to follow up on that, basically, unless you decide not to do it on your own, either way, it's gonna get done. You'd either do it yourself or the city. So either way, it's gonna be done.
Yeah, and I
And,
don't have a problem.
as far as what the use is for, and I'm just gonna say for the people that are here quickly, is that, I talked to Adam, he did send me an email, that's what I'm trying to find, and I don't find my pile of papers, so I probably left it at home. But anyway, there is a conditional use on this property, which goes back to 1993. What it's all been used for in that time, I don't know. He listed a couple things that it had been, one was the warehouse, I think that was most recent. You know, so I'm not debating what for, I'm just getting back or where this is. Conditional use permit, which has been there. That's a long time ago, and what it got was for, I don't know. Adam did list 3 things, and that's mostly why I wanted to list on that email is that doesn't have to do with the work. That has more to do with, if I remember right, with the operation. Limited to so many people, you know, there are 3 items, I think. One was the limited people. That could work there at one time.
Mr. Chairperson, if you give me
And
a
I think that
moment,
was fun.
if you can give me a moment, I'm trying to pull up that thing you're talking about from Adam. I can read it. We've got
You
it.
made it, Brent.
We've
I
got
thought
to
I
see
did.
it
I
on
thought it was-
email.
Again, just, I'll just restate my concern, a point of order. This discussion about use of property has nothing to do with the Public Works Committee. I think those types of discussion would be great to do outside this committee, but this committee has 0 to do with anything use related to private property. I think we really need to stick to the request on the table.
I'm Rob Nash, I'm the COO, and I understand, I agree with you that it doesn't have anything to do with this, but I'm gonna read the letter that Adam and I drafted up together, what Tom was talking about, because I was on the phone with Adam. It says the property located at 1331 14th Street North has had a varied history and has recently been purchased with the intent of locating a distribution, pack and ship warehouse use on the property. Based upon research on the history of the parcel, there have been a wide variety of uses, including a repair shop, wood warehouse, carpentry business, general warehousing. The original non-residential use of the property appears to have been established prior to any zoning restrictions to the contrary. In 1993, a small expansion of the property was approved by a conditional use planned unit development that brought the non-residential use into compliance. Since that time, the 2 documented uses include a carpentry business and a warehouse. As such, staff is of the opinion that the proposed use of the property for distribution, pack and ship warehouse would not be an expansion of the use and would be consistent with the approved conditional use. However, to ensure that the use is operated in a manner consistent with the previous uses of the site, the following conditions would need to be adhered to, and anything above and beyond would require a new conditional use or rezoning. Number 1, no more than 5 employees shall work at the facility at any one time. Number 2, hours of operation shall occur only between 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. Number 3, no more than 2 semi-truck deliveries shall occur in a week. Every effort shall be made to utilize smaller vehicles for delivery, which Pete's Meat Service owns a cube van, and that's our intention for most of our deliveries. And number 4, any expansion of the facility footprint or change in use not consistent with the past uses of the property shall require a conditional use or rezoning approval. And that was drafted by Adam T. and myself on Friday on the telephone.
That's the letter.
And without putting words in Adam's mouth, Adam did indicate that that is a public document, so I could potentially send that to you guys via email. I don't have your email, but I can, if you
Yeah,
write it
that'd be
down
great, just so I have
before we
copies.
leave, yeah, write it out.
Sure.
My thing here, I'll send it to you guys, so. And I feel confident or comfortable with those requirements. I mean, if it gets worse, we plainly know there was a guy selling pumpkins and there was only a couple of complaints and he got shut down. So I mean, it's a case where if these aren't adhered to again, then we're stepping outside the realm of legal authority to talk about this. But as far as I'm concerned, moving forward with everybody understanding that, I make a motion. Well, actually, prior to me making a motion, is there costs incurred that the city is going to recoup in terms of being the project manager on this versus having a private plumber do the work?
There was engineering contingency included in the range of costs.
Okay. With that said, I make a motion to accept option 1 with the fact that the city is gonna be the project manager, whatever you wanna call it, in terms of this water and sewer, upgrade.
I'll second.
Is that the city doing the work?
Yes, city is
Okay,
doing.
just to be clear. Any other discussion? Basically, or we are on that basically, is to, the service is gonna go in, one way or the other. So, committee, if there's no further discussion, we'll vote on that item. Do you have that down, Joe?
I do.
Okay, you wanna read it?
Accept option 1 with the city administrating the sanitary and water installation for 1331 14th Street North.
Okay, committee will vote. All in favor, respond by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. That's what'll be recommended to the council, and that's tomorrow night. If I may, I don't know if you have questions for the people themselves or anything. If you wanted to after the meeting, I was just.
We already talked before we came in here.
Oh, okay.
Good.
Yeah, you were out in the hallway. I didn't know you talked. Okay. All right. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Item 2 on our agenda is discuss a change order policy for the West Side Lift Station and Force Main projects.
So on our west side lift station and force main projects, those are large-scale projects, millions of dollars worth of investment. The current policy for change orders is shown on the screen, and it limits the city engineer for up to $1,000 or 8% of the contract lump sum bid. We have some concerns on that project right now. There was some rock encountered that the geotechnical surveys did not discover, and the possibility of having a change order to address that issue and, you know, potentially some others is there. According to the policy, any change order over $1,000 requires this committee's review. And the situation with the project right now is the work is shut down while the general contractor is coming up with a plan how to deal with the situation. Blasting may not be an option because of the surrounding areas, and in a few weeks, once the animals are at the zoo, it could be a concern for the health and stress levels, I guess, for the animals at the zoo. So once a remedy is discovered, the consulting engineer will review it and make a recommendation to the city. The city would then review that and take action going forward. The concern we have, especially with this type of project, with the boring under the river, with the size of the lift station project and some of the unknowns, is that we want to make sure that we keep the project moving. The delays in the project could result in change orders against the city just for delays. So there's kind of 2 options as I see it, is we could just continue to follow policy. Whenever we have a change order, we could have a special public works meeting that we could call with 24-hour notice. The policy, I don't know that that's in the ordinances, but the policy seems to indicate that the committee has the ultimate authority, that it wouldn't necessarily have to delay until the next council meeting or special council meeting. So if the committee in those situations feels that it could meet promptly, we could just continue following the policy on this type of project. But essentially, any change order is going to be on a project this magnitude is going to be over $1,000, so we'd have to approve each one. The city attorney came up with some language that she thought might be something to consider, and that is on the back of your sheet. It's to authorize the mayor to approve and execute change orders on the wastewater lift station and river crossing project in the amount up to the contingency amount, which is about 5% on this project. Already approved and budgeted for. In the event that it is determined the Public Works Committee is not able to timely meet and address the change order request without delaying the project and or potentially causing additional costs. So just wanted to get a feel for the committee's opinion on change orders for this project. Our finance director has recommended that this change order policy really isn't practical, and that his recommendation is that when we let bids on any of our public works construction projects, that we should actually have, after the project is awarded, that the committee may have some standards for how they want to address change orders, but the committee addresses change orders on a project-by-project basis. You may want to set a limit on a percentage, you may want to set limits on dollar amounts, you may want to set it so that for any change order above a certain amount, the committee has to meet, but we want to try to make sure that we keep these projects moving and we don't have delays. So whatever you're comfortable with, we'll make work.
Well, first of all, I guess I would rather see the recommendation from the finance director himself, whether it's in an email format or whether he would be in person. I don't feel comfortable with anybody putting words into anybody else's mouth. And like I mentioned to our guests that were here with Adam Tagg, and he had mentioned to me about being able to disseminate that information, so I'm going to directly correspond with them. So without seeing any correspondence from the finance director, I can't use that in any decision that I'm going to make. But as far as this specific blanket ordinance change or policy change that the city attorney has made, I think that this is way too expansive as far as the reaches of authority. The city council, we are best with one main privilege, and that's the power of the purse. And I would ask the committee if they want to try and move forward, and if it is a case where it's a special meeting until it becomes an absolute burden. I think we're trying to fix a problem that isn't a problem yet. So with this, I personally am not interested in changing the policy right now.
Joe,
I guess just to clarify, just for these two projects, I mean, and lies within the contingency amount, correct?
Correct.
So it's not an ordinance change, it's just for those two projects within the budgeted amount?
Budgeted amount.
So it's all within what's been.
Right.
So, you said you incurred some difficulties on the project with rocks. What is the potential impact of the change order that you're looking to seek, and why?
We've asked the contractor if he could put an order of magnitude on it. Is it thousands of dollars, tens of
Right.
thousands, hundreds of thousands? And
Because-
at this point, they're not able to do that. They're still working on a solution. And when they find a solution, they'll submit a change order request.
Because in a situation like you're speaking of, to adjust the amount would be basically endless. I mean, because like you said, we don't know what the possible solution is in order to
Well,
get through the rock.
No, that's not true.
Only up to the contingent, the approved,
Yeah, the approved.
budgeted and contingency
you're
amount.
saying the amount that was approved in the budget.
Correct.
Yeah.
No more money than that could be spent.
There is a larger, I guess, policy discussion based upon our current policy that, how we interact with these projects, but for this specific project.
Yeah, I think there's $120,000-ish. Hang on. I can tell you exactly what the numbers are.
So in the event that 120,000 or approximately what the number Joe's looking up is reached, or goes beyond, that's when we'd be back in here.
Well, how does it affect your office if we were able to meet every single time there was a special meeting called to be able to have this approved? It wouldn't affect your office at all, right?
If we
Right.
could meet in a day, it wouldn't be a problem.
So my only concern is I don't have the ability to meet every single day, and I understand but once again, I still go over the language of which the dollar amount that would be requested to switch the change
So
order.
the force
being that we
main-
don't know what that is.
The force main project for the river crossing is 197,537. That's what's built into the contingency of the project. The lift station is 123,978. So for example, if there was a request for a $2,000 change order to allow for something to happen, that's outside the parameters of the,
Yep.
right? Project gets shut down. Construction workers go home. City's gotta meet and decide whether or not to approve it. On a project of this magnitude, you know, say it takes 3 days, we got a 24-hour notice, we have the meeting. If it, in fact, the council approved this policy, the council already gave the authority to the standing committee to make the decision. So the council's already made that authority. So you're talking a couple days, 3 days probably, before you get a change order signed. There's a potential for a project delay change order then for the time that the contractor wasn't able to work on the project.
So I guess I still go back to, do you have a recommendation on a dollar amount that could be adjusted, but yet still fit the parameters in which it comes
Yeah.
back to committee for a meeting, but yet is sufficient enough to make small adjustments, because $1,000 isn't a significant amount of money in order to, I mean, any change order is gonna add up to $1,000.
Yeah, I think on a project like this, again, it's up to the committee and council, but, you know, I think since this is the budgeted amount, and this is the amount of the Clean Water Fund loan that was just approved, that those change orders up to that amount, you could allow staff to approve, and in the city's case, the head of staff is the mayor.
In one sense, that may be right, but I can see where people would, that 100 and whatever thousand would be, it's there, I'm not debating it, it's there in the budget, that it could be spent, I think we'd be kept up to speed on what's taking place, but.
Yeah, those are
but
contract
that's-
documents.
That's the,
And that's really not a lot different than, the budget to allow the street department to do street maintenance. There's, $300,000-$400,000 there that you're trusting your staff to perform that work in accordance to your expectations and budget, right? So this is kind of similar to that, but we see on this project, we see the change order policy that's in place to potentially be a hurdle that will likely cost the city more. And if this is what you want to do, this is the policy that's in place, and we would then expect to,
well, $1,000 for a project like this is not,
Well, I
any
mean,
change order is gonna go over that.
pretty much.
yeah.
Uh,
But change orders over $1,000, provided that the sum is change order under consideration of the previous change orders do not exceed 8% of the contract lump sum bid, shall be approved by the city engineer. So the city engineer, the assistant city engineer can approve up to 1,000, the city engineer has 1,000 to 5,000, and after which would come to the Public Works Committee. And you're saying that $5,000 change order is not sufficient enough for the city engineer to
I
make
think
those
on this
changes?
project, the city would incur additional change order costs because of the policy that's in place. The red tape ultimately, I think, could cost the wastewater utility quite a bit.
Do you have the part of the contract that suggests that the municipality is responsible for costs over in delayed on change orders?
There's
Because I've
project
worked in the
delays in
construction
contracts.
industry for 20 years, and I know that there's contingencies that municipalities have with contractors with liquidated damages of getting the contract done in a timely fashion, and if it doesn't get finished by a certain date, then it's $500 a day. But I've never heard of a side where the municipality is the one that owes the contractor money. Because contractors that do business with municipalities know that you just can't have a meeting right now to approve. And I know that Myron Construction, because I've worked for Myron Construction many different times as an iron worker, does a lot of work with municipalities and school districts. So they've gone through the process with school boards and city councils and everything. So I can't believe that they would, and maybe I'm wrong, maybe we would offer them a contract that would penalize us for potential work that we would have to do. But again, they're a very strong player in the state of Wisconsin. They do a lot of municipal and school work, and they do a wonderful job. I would advocate them. Just because they're out of Neenah doesn't necessarily mean that they have employees from Neenah. Again, I worked for them, and even on the high school project here, there was 4 iron workers that graduated from Lincoln High School that were on that particular project. So they're as local of a company, but I just can't believe that a contract would penalize a local government in terms of we need to have this approved right now, otherwise we're gonna send our guys home and pay for it. And then on top of that, every single time that I've got sent home early on a particular job site, I didn't get paid. It's not that the contractor's gotta pay us and now they gotta recruit or recoup monies from the municipality. If I get sent home at noon because there was a situation where scheduling or material didn't show up, or different trades not doing, if I got sent home at noon, I only got paid from 7 o'clock till noon, that's it. So, I mean, yeah, I can't believe it.
Okay, section 4.05, and it is pretty boilerplate, delays in contractors' progress. You know, if the contractor's performance or progress is delayed, disrupted, or interrupted, and under item C, with by unanticipated causes not the fault of and beyond the control of the owner, contractor, and those responsible, the contractor shall be entitled to an equitable adjustment in contract times. But anyway, there's a standard section in the contract that describes delays in the contractor's progress.
I don't know, I would say I want clarification on what this actually means before I make a vote on changing a current policy. There's a reason why we've got the current policy, and this isn't the only construction project that we've ever done, correct? We've done countless.
Many.
So why is this a concern now?
No, I think, well, that project is 5% contingency. Policy allows 8, but it's limited to $1,000 at a crack. Okay.
Can you zoom that in a little bit? So I can-
Sure. Which part do you want?
C, paragraph C.
You want to start at the top?
That'll work. Thank
Each
you.
one of them?
This is the contract for this.
Lift station project. This is the actual contract.
Well, I'm not an attorney, but item A looks like if we hold up the contractor for any reason, we can't come back and say we demand liquidated damages if the project lasts after the substantial completion date. Rather than, it doesn't explicitly say if we hold up anything, the contractor can ding us for whatever they feel characterized as malfeasance.
So it's, I mean, since we don't know, we don't know what the change order amount might be, and maybe we leave the item as is, but is there something that is reasonable at this time to the committee?
No, I say we get a opinion, a legal opinion, whether it's Sue's opinion or whether we gotta send it to Root or Ware of that particular language in the contract. And if there's any case law on it, if any contractors have cited that and gone after municipalities for delayed action because of board inaction or board relative inaction, because they gotta understand that there's a 24-hour period unless it's an emergency. And again, I don't know where this is coming from. I think that we're trying to find a solution. We've had projects done in the past. I think that we're trying to find a solution to a problem that doesn't exist yet.
For example, for the construction project, what, $30-some million wastewater expansion, the superintendent was given the authority to approve change orders along with the wastewater commission. So, yeah, I mean,
To a specified dollar amount or percentage of the project cost?
that I don't know.
Well, we need to know that information. I mean, you just can't throw out a statement like that without having the information.
That's fine. I'm just letting you know that if we can't act promptly, there could be additional costs. And with the policy that we have with the small limits in place, it's fine if there's additional costs, because to set our work aside, ask our city attorney to define case law and come up with, you know, a whole bunch of rationalization, there's not time for that. We can work-
Has there been any costs awarded yet, so far?
We have a significant issue taking place right now that's
Has
gonna.
there been any costs awarded yet against the city?
No.
Then I don't know what the problem is.
Okay.
Motion to take care of this, to get it off, I guess, the agenda, would be probably worded.
Or if a motion doesn't exist, then it just fails, or?
So I mean, I still look at the construction process and understand that, you know,
Well-
we accrue costs.
Yeah.
And go back to what you said, I mean, if the size of a project warrants different language in order to ease the flow and transition of the project, I am open to listening to it. But if there's any information you can give us on something like that to say, you know, what was awarded, I don't like percentages. But I also understand that I'm not really a big favor of saying $1,000, because we all understand that sometimes this language was printed years ago and it might not be in tune with, especially a magnitude project, you know, maybe this is an escalation and that this gets prior approval that this is what we've done in the past, anything over $10 million, this is the type of language that occurs only for this specific project. I'm more than willing to listen to it because I think it's appropriate. But without that being, you know, we don't know what that dollar amount is. I mean, is there?
So on this project, it was 5%.
Yep.
And that's right in the terms of our Clean Water Fund loan.
Mhm.
For the force main, the contingency in the project, in the, you know, right in the loan documents.
Yep.
For the force main is $197,537, and for the lift station is $123,978.
Right.
So, you know, up to that amount, that's the up to, it's 5% of each of those respective projects. You know, the loan agency trusts the municipality to make those adjustments because they are typical. Adjustments beyond that, and the DNR has to review the change order and approvals as well. So for these projects, there's a pretty extensive process that the municipality is responsible for. You know, it's up to 5%. Beyond that, then we have to make a special request back to the state. It's reviewed and consideration is given then as well. So, you know, this request would be typical or similar to what the state's already allowing, you know, the city to do. But again, if
Before I see where you're coming from, I think anyway. You know, instead of that 123, that could, I guess, just be used by change orders. For this case, is there a limit that we could agree with, and in the meantime that it's checked? What you were saying, has the community been held liable?
My only fear is that once we allow this, we're never gonna do that. Once we give the mayor that authority. Because
and I understand that.
the mayor's the head of staff, we're the head of the budget. Excuse me. Once we give that up, that's it.
Gotcha.
But you're talking any, and just to be clear, because you took the language of it, the mayor would only have the I don't agree with this language. Just to be clear. I definitely would agree with increasing the dollar amounts to have you have the ability as the engineer to make the appropriate change orders to keep progress going. But I think that's obviously kind of what Thad alluded to, is that we have to answer for it. So we have so many projects going on, and we have to start balancing what we're doing, because right now I see money getting thrown at absolutely everything. This is a must-do project. We all understand that. We all agree that this project has to happen. This should have been done 8 years ago, or whatever we talked about, 7,
Well, no,
whatever it was. But
But I think there does need to be understanding that contracts are generally signed by the highest level official,
Mhm.
right? And like the contract for the project was approved by council, signed by the mayor,
Mhm.
right? So I mean, if you're giving staff the authority to,
Well, that's what that language gave him. Up from 1,000 to 5,000 gave him the authority to make the change order from 1,000 to 5,000.
you could give that authority to you,
That's not what that language says.
but the
Right.
council could.
Right.
What I'm getting at is, right, with some vision, looking ahead, knowing that we have an extensive project, we're already encountering a serious issue. We have a river crossing that is largely unpredictable. If we can avoid delays in the project, we will avoid the propensity for additional charges and additional change order costs from the contractor if we have an efficient process. If you feel the process is efficient and you don't think that there's a reasonable way to improve it, then that's fine. I brought it up because, again, I have some vision on these projects, that these are unique projects. We're already encountering some difficulty on the one project that's gonna require the city to act swiftly. When we do have a reasonable solution, we'll have to make a determination on that solution relatively swiftly. And my concern is that this policy as it exists in many cases won't allow that. If we have a small change order amount and the project needs to be shut down so that we can hold a meeting 24 hours later, and that's gonna have some ramifications. And if it doesn't on this project, if Myron wins the bid for the aquatic center or any other significant municipal project, believe me, their prices, word gets out quick. If municipalities are easy to
I
work with.
think that's out of order to make that comment.
Okay, never mind. It's not out of order. I was at a conference that had a session that spoke specifically about contractors and how they treat, whether it's consulting firms that oversee projects or municipalities that bid projects, that there are factors for specific areas because of their practices.
That's
with
not
those
what we're
areas.
talking about. We're talking about increasing the amount that the city and whoever the city gives the
Gives it,
authority
yeah.
to for a change order. And that's all we're talking about.
So that we can be efficient on these projects.
And this goes back to my initial concern. Where's this coming from? How much have we been charged by this project for inefficiencies yet? How much?
We haven't.
Yes, exactly. So why are we trying to find a solution to a problem that doesn't exist?
It's a problem that will exist. It's a problem that on this project, right, this project, we're supposed to have it done before the end of the year. We need to get it done. If there are project delays,
I think that these are scare tactics. This is a case procedurally, Lee, where if you can't get out of work, you can choose another council member to sit in your place on this committee. Also, it's a case where I've taken off, I don't know how much work for this, but I've taken the responsibility of council president as well as planning commission member. I know I have these, so I'm gonna make sure that I'm at these meetings, that if they need to be especially an emergency. And I know, Tom, you're as passionate as you can get, so it would be a case, worst case scenario, 2 out of 3 committee members come down, and if it's a change order that needs to be approved, we're here.
then I don't think there is an issue. Then we wouldn't need to make a change to anything.
Well, I'm hearing for the time being anyway, I think that be left status quo. we'll see what happens, I guess, and, that we're discussing it, we can have a motion if we want, but I don't know if we really have to, just.
I don't think it'd be
So
necessary.
it's worded that,
I think the minutes can
that
just
we're
reflect that
leave
it was
as is.
discussed.
Yeah.
Would it be
Is
something?
that
that
okay,
we-
committee? Leave as is?
Either there, we can make a motion to approve it and vote no on it.
That's an option.
Well, then it sits on the council floor. If it's discussed and dies, then it's dead. If there's no motion, there's no further discussion at the council level.
But then if the council so chooses to vote it down, then it's done.
But the council could bring it up, discuss it, and vote to move it forward as well.
Well, then that's
Either
their,
way, yeah,
that's their
yeah.
decision.
It'll be on, reported on last night, or tomorrow night.
You get the last say, Lee.
So, I guess what I was getting at was I believe that you guys were hired to do your job, right? And when I say that, I mean, I want to empower people in their positions to do the best job they can. I could see what your ask is that this is prohibiting you from moving a project forward, but I don't think that giving you free reign of, or anybody, free reign of 5% of the total cost of the project is appropriate for what we can do. Like you said, the contingency was based on the fact that we can't meet in a timely fashion
Mhm.
to approve change orders
And
out to
that
a five.
condition is part of the request. If the committee can meet, then we wouldn't need to have any special conditions, right? It's if the committee can't meet and for an amount that the committee feels is appropriate, and ultimately the council feels appropriate for a project of this magnitude.
I think it's still a discussion at some point in the future if the committee would like to. I mean, looking at $1,000 or $5,000 at some point, you know, depends how many meetings we'd like to have, but.
Right, so in that case, we wouldn't wanna take a motion on it or action on it now. You would just wanna say that we discussed it, reflect that in the minutes in order to discuss this later in case we run.
I think
into
what Joe's
issues.
saying is we currently have 3 large projects underway right now.
Mhm.
And if there are any change orders whatsoever, right, this committee could be meeting,
At over $5,000.
right, several times a week. If something happens, right, it may not be. I just, you know, with these projects, I just wanna make sure that we're doing what we can to be responsible and keep them moving.
Unless we want, I guess, raise that $1,000, I think just have this discussion of where we're at and,
Well, like I said, so it's the assistant city engineer that can make change orders, approve change orders up to 1,000, city engineer from 1,000 to 5,000. And that's why I was asking you, is 5,000 or is it a number of 10,000, anything from 1,000 to 10,000? Is that more appropriate for change orders?
Yeah, I mean, the amount, I would say today it doesn't reflect, you know, maybe what the date, the year when the policy was put
Right,
together.
that's what I'm asking.
The other distinction is it a budgeted amount that you're going beyond, or is it, you know, so for instance, is it $5,000 beyond the budgeted amount that you're approving a change order for, or is it $5,000 within the budget amount?
Yeah.
And that, I mean, from a staff standpoint, it's a consideration that we have certainly, because certainly working within budget amounts versus if we're gonna take a step outside of that, I mean, that's certainly where budgets are approved.
You would want to constrain that.
Right, because I mean, it'd be really inappropriate to authorize really any individual
We already did
on a
it.
project like this to go outside of the budget,
Oh,
right? To say that, you know.
but it isn't
within-
specified in the
Within the
language.
contingency within the budget, and if the committee's unable to meet right away.
And
You
that could be
know-
assumed.
You know, one thing I never thought of until just now is that if we give someone the authority, if it's the request that it specifically is at hand, that takes the public aspect out of it. Because if we, as a committee, have to approve a change order every time, the public is at least notified about it. So it becomes public record that contractor XYZ is seeking a $15,000, a $35,000, a $120,000 change order for that. But if we consolidate that into one specific office, now there is no public oversight with that. And that's one thing that's even scarier than anything else I brought up.
But that's how your monthly finance meetings work now, right? You're authorizing your staff to make decisions. The council's not approving the bills, they're reviewing them. The bills have already been paid. You're approving the checks, but if something was already paid for, right, I mean, the city's on the hook for it. It's a matter
Yeah,
of
and
making
that-
sure the
and defi-
policy's
and-
being followed
And that being sure, I mean, I definitely would have a very strong issue with that, and that goes back to the bonding for this project in particular, is that, or even the Demons Park project.
Yeah,
We
this-
were approving money after it was already spent. And
Well,
that's an
this-
issue.
On this particular project, the change orders also have to be approved by the DNR.
Mhm.
You know, so I mean, there are numerous agencies that,
What is the percentage of the DNR denying the change orders?
Well, I think just from a change order standpoint, most of the change orders, I mean, they're not frivolous things, they're necessities. They're like, you hit rock where there wasn't rock expected, and in order to go deeper, you have to remove the rock. Contractors go in and request for additional funds. That, by and large, a lot of the change orders we see are, it just differs from the plans. It was the original intent, or there's some other thing that's encountered that changes from that original intent, that they have to deal with it. There isn't, well,
And that's not always appropriate either. I mean, it could be once it's being erected, they see some issues that because it's hard to look in the future and say that you're gonna be able to, confidently be able to predict absolutely everything that is appropriate in that project. So change orders not only are out of necessity for the completion of the project, but they also can be for something that is unforeseen, but isn't
Yeah.
a necessity to finish the project, so that's not necessarily.
and on these two projects as well as the Riverfront project, there's also a consulting engineer working for the city that goes through all the change orders and makes recommendations on behalf of the city also, right? So there'll be a written report from the consulting engineer whether or not they recommend approving the change order or not, as an agent for the city.
Well, then we'd be meeting anyway.
Yep.
Then we'd have to meet on it anyway to approve it, right? Because he's just making the recommendation that we approve the change order for
Right, so-
such a reading where we'd have to meet.
Well, so
In order to
again,
approve
so the
it.
question is if it's within budget and within the contingency amount,
Well, I
do you want to have the meeting or do you want to authorize staff to be able to make those decisions?
No, it's authorized the mayor, not staff.
right, and as it
Well, I
was-
mean, what'll happen is it'll come to Ryan and to me, and then we end up reviewing it and then would ask the mayor to sign it.
Or you could do the same thing and recommend it to us, and then we would approve it, right?
For right now, I guess I'd be in favor just to leave as is.
Yeah, I guess to go on the record, I don't have a problem down the road changing it from 1,000, 5,000, 5,000, 20,000, or whatever the numbers, but this blanket change, there's no way and I don't care if the mayor was sitting here at the time right now, there's no way I'm giving him that authority, period, sorry. So.
So I think though the question is, not a blanket change, right, it's within the budget amount, and is there an amount that would be reasonable, right? I mean, again, we can wait and have the finance director discuss the same things at a finance committee meeting, but his recommendation to me when I brought this up is that his preference is that policy might be fine for small contracts, but that the contracts that the city does varies tremendously from project to project. And his recommendation is that then from project to project, the committee and ultimately council would decide what's appropriate for that project. 5%. And not to exceed, you know, one project might be $2,000. One other project might be $25,000 or $30,000, you know, whatever,
Yeah, it's just
whatever's
tough.
appropriate for the project.
It's tougher right now for us to make that differentiation between what is the project level, which occurs separate language.
Okay.
But I mean, I agree with you that we should have looked at this possibly even before the start of this project to say that, do we change this language? You know, it's tough. But then again, we haven't occurred in anything quite yet.
Or change the language in the contract.
Yeah.
That should have been addressed before we signed the contract. I wish we had someone looking at that stuff before we award a contract.
We had our attorney look at it, we had our consulting engineer wrote the contract, Strand Associates wrote the contract, our city attorney reviewed it, and I believe the League of Municipalities might have looked at that also.
Well, then if Strand wrote it, then ask Strand, or I can even ask Strand, I got a couple contacts there, how many times a municipality has been dinged on that particular language there? I feel that this is potentially, and Lee suggested, we want to empower staff, but it seems like there's some kind of movement now that says that the committee and or the elected body can't get their stuff together to be able to meet on a timely fashion to be able to approve certain change orders.
I would like for myself to hear what somebody had to say,
Yeah.
Strand or whoever.
Yeah, how many times, because I don't, this feels like we're getting browbeat because somehow we've missed so many meetings and we've cost the taxpayers. In fact, I'm looking at saving the taxpayers with this because I'm not gonna give blanket authority to write any change orders without our approval, without council approval. I mean, it's been noted in the past that the council has been blamed for spending issues when they have given authority to other people. So I'm not gonna be in that position where I get blamed as a council member because we have the ultimate authority for spending, because we gave authority to someone else, and then now there's other things going on. So ultimately, until we create a failure by the committee not meeting, by the committee not taking action, and then there is fines or forfeitures or whatever else, then that is due time to create changes. But right now, if I understand it, there's a suggestion being made that we are incapable of a committee and or a council to be able to enact the proper legislation or approval for particular change orders. That's what it seems like. I guess I can't be the only one to feel that way. I can't, but I don't get it. I don't know.
So
If there was a problem, as your council president, I'm sure you would be rattling some things, why can't people meet?
Well,
To have somebody to meet anyway.
You know what's interesting, Mr. Chairperson, is that sometimes I'm the last one to know about anything, and I'm the council
know.
president.
Well, then we're gonna have a meeting until we know.
That's right. That's right.
So we, just to be clear, so that if a change order is requested, get it to the committee immediately for a special meeting if possible. Then it'll go to council beyond that, or is there needs to be council approval that the committee can make it?
It seems by this policy, the council already designated that authority to the committee. Let's see.
I mean, until we're deemed incompetent by an injunction through circuit court, I think that it should remain a status quo. Motion to, well.
Yeah, I think to leave it as it is, the minutes will reflect that it was discussed. No action taken.
Yeah, so then we wouldn't even need a motion.
Yeah, number 5, change orders which materially influence the scope of the project,
Or,
as well as change orders which are used to acquire additional construction fixtures, et cetera, not intended in the original contract, must be approved by the Public Works Committee prior to issuance. So I don't, on this version, this digital version, there aren't signatures, but this is what's in the manual, so the council gave the committee the authority to make those approvals.
What do you think, Lee?
I mean, there's nothing that, we discussed it. I think there's obviously concerns, and it would be open for conversation later, but I definitely agree with you. I for one have heard a lot of rumblings about, the fact that certain people have made decisions that are inappropriate, and it's ultimately falls on the city council. So with that being said, I mean, like I said, I still think the appropriate amounts could be looked at, and I would be curious to see that language moving forward, but to give the authority strictly to the mayor to spend up to 100, whatever's contingent, that would have to require a lot more than us in this room to make sure that the language is written up properly for projects the size of, you know, in excess of $2 million, in excess of $8 million, or so whatever the earmarks are.
So then, that being said, do we wanna make a motion to approve this, and then second, and then vote it down, so that the whole council can actually vote on it, and see that this was, voted negatively, so that if they had the pleasure of overturning our action tonight, because if that's the case, then we can start out from scratch. If that gets, beaten or defeated or whatever, then that gives Joe and Joe the ability to completely start from scratch and identify some of the concerns that we had and address the $1,000 and $5,000 limits.
You're saying to get rid of the current language as proposed?
By-
Because it's proposed?
By making a motion for it and then
vote against it.
voting against it.
Well, I mean, what's being requested is for this specific project. You know, if we're gonna look at an overall policy
Right.
review, it'll be much more extensive. You know, and I don't know that we'd have time to make that a short-term priority anyway.
Well, the committee has got the ability to basically, in the future, even at a special committee meeting, to designate someone, if it gets out of control, to designate a staff member or someone else at that time, right?
I would think so.
Yeah.
That would require, the committee can make a recommendation, but that would require council approval, because that'd be a policy issue, just like,
We would call a special council meeting to it,
Yeah.
so,
okay.
I mean, we've got the ability to make legislation.
That can be done.
Yeah, well, that's absolutely.
This is gonna go to council, so I guess just so we want it to come out of there.
To explain where our position is, because technically,
Yep, I
we won't be able to discuss this on the council floor. It'll just say that it was discussed, but because it isn't an item, there won't be any further discussion unless we actually take a vote on a specific item.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll make a motion to approve, because we can't make a negative motion, I'll make a motion to approve the change order policy for the West Side Lift Station force tank as printed.
And I'll second the motion as printed.
Just waiting for Joe to. You got it there?
Got it.
What does it say, I guess?
Motion by Kubiszak, second by Graff, to approve, authorizing the mayor to approve and execute change orders on the wastewater lift station and river crossing projects in amount up to the contingency amount already approved and budgeted for the project in the event it is determined that the Public Works Committee is not able to timely meet and address the change order request without delaying the project and/or potentially causing additional costs.
Committee, let's vote. All in favor, respond by aye. Opposed?
Nay. I make a motion to adjourn.
Motion made, I'll second it. Motion made, second to adjourn. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? That's it. Adjourned at, what are we at? 6:36.